Okay, so we're diving deep into Vietnam's democracy movement today.
Sounds fascinating.
It is, and we've got a ton of material to dig through.
Like what kind of stuff?
Meeting agendas,
Hmm.
exhibition plans, letters, even some expert analysis, all giving us a glimpse into how this movement is working.
Oh, wow. So we're getting right into the nitty-gritty.
Exactly. And one thing that jumps out is the role of the Alliance for Vietnam's Democracy.
Tell me about them.
They're like this coalition, bringing together all sorts of Vietnamese diaspora organizations and activists.
So folks who are living outside of Vietnam but still fighting for change back home.
Exactly. And their mission is to push for democratic reforms, human rights, the whole package.
I see. And how are they going about that?
Well, one big project they're working on is an exhibition booth at RightsCon Taipei 2025.
RightsCon.
Yeah, it's this big international conference all about digital rights.
Interesting. So they're using that platform to bring attention to Vietnam's struggle.
Right. And their booth is cleverly titled Vietnam's Path to Democracy, Voices of Resilience.
Catchy. What are they showcasing there?
It's not just dry facts and figures.
Uh-huh.
They're highlighting real stories of activists, using multimedia, and really getting creative with technology to make it interactive.
Oh, I like that. Like hands-on exhibits and stuff.
You got it. QR codes linking to in-depth reports, tablets where you can sign petitions.
Yeah.
They're making it easy for people to engage and learn.
That's clever.
Yeah.
It pulls people in, makes them feel more connected to the issue.
Exactly. It's not just passive information. It's about making you feel part of the movement.
I can see how that would be effective.
And they're not stopping there.
What else are they up to?
They're reaching out to organizations in Taiwan, like the Taiwan Association for Human Rights, and even the Democratic Progressive Party, the DPP.
The ruling party in Taiwan. That's interesting. Why are they connecting with them?
Well, Taiwan's journey to democracy is a pretty powerful model for Vietnam, wouldn't you say?
I see where you're going with this.
The DPP has firsthand experience with democratic transition, navigating that whole process while facing pressure from an authoritarian regime, kind of like what Vietnam is going through now.
It's like a real-world case study.
Exactly. The DPP can offer practical guidance, insights on building a resilient democracy, countering disinformation, engaging the diaspora, all crucial stuff for Vietnam's pro-democracy movement.
It's not just shared values then. It's about sharing practical know-how.
You got it. And they're not limiting themselves to Taiwan either.
Really? Who else are they reaching out to?
They're casting a wide net, looking for global partners, anyone who shares their concerns about human rights abuses in Vietnam, and how authoritarian regimes are creating regional security challenges.
So it's a multi-pronged approach.
Absolutely. We're talking the World League for Freedom and Democracy.
Wow, that's quite a lineup. Human rights groups, think tanks, democracy promoters. It shows how this isn't just a Vietnamese issue.
Exactly. It's a global concern, and they're building a coalition to tackle it.
Makes sense. So what are they hoping to get out of these global partnerships?
They want to leverage collective strength, create a united front to push for change.
And what does that look like in practice?
We're talking joint statements, condemning human rights violations, mobilizing the Vietnamese diaspora to apply pressure, even exploring tech to help activists on the ground.
So it's about amplifying their message and making a real impact.
Exactly. But let's shift gears for a moment and talk about digital rights and press freedom in Vietnam.
Yeah, I was curious about that.
Sadly, it's not a pretty picture.
How so?
The government controls the media, independent journalism is basically criminalized, and the internet is heavily censored.
Oh, wow. So it's a really restrictive environment.
Very much so. And the 2018 cybersecurity law basically gave them even more power to control online activity and crack down on dissent.
So how do people even communicate? How do they access information?
That's where VPNs come in.
VPNs,
Yeah.
as in virtual private networks.
Yeah, they're like a lifeline for bypassing censorship and protecting online identities.
So people can use them to access blocked websites, communicate securely, even hide their location.
Exactly. It's not a perfect solution, but it's crucial for anyone trying to operate outside the government's control.
I can see why they'd be so important in a place like Vietnam.
But it's a constant cat and mouse game.
How so?
Governments are getting better at detecting and blocking VPN traffic, so it's risky business, especially with the high stakes involved.
And we keep mentioning this cybersecurity law, but for those who aren't familiar, can you explain how it impacts everyday life in Vietnam?
Imagine Big Brother is watching your every move online. That's basically it.
Seriously.
The cybersecurity law lets the government monitor online activity, censor anything they deem unacceptable, even demand platforms hand over user data.
That's scary. People must be terrified to speak their minds.
It creates this chilling effect where everyone is self-censoring, even in private conversations.
So how do you even measure progress towards democracy in such a place?
Well, one of our sources is this scorecard for assessing free and fair elections.
The scorecard.
It lays out all these criteria across 4 categories: voting rights, candidate and party rights, the state's responsibility in ensuring fair elections, and, crucially, transparency throughout the whole process.
Interesting. So how does Vietnam measure up?
Not, well, to put it mildly,
Uh-huh.
when you compare their system to this scorecard, it's like night and day.
What kinds of things are missing?
Independent candidates, real opposition parties, a free press to report on elections, all those basic democratic elements are severely lacking.
So it highlights the gap between rhetoric and reality.
Exactly. The alliance is using this scorecard to expose those flaws and advocate for meaningful reforms.
I see. So it's a tool for pushing for change.
And speaking of pushing for change, they've got this big trip to Taipei coming up for RightsCon 2025.
Right. We touched on that earlier, but what exactly will they be doing there?
They've got a packed schedule. Meetings with various organizations, their exhibition booth, even a visit to the Wuxi Mountain Military Cemetery to honor fallen soldiers of the Vietnam War.
Wow, that's quite a mix.
It's symbolic, don't you think?
How so?
It connects their current fight for democracy to this broader historical struggle, honoring sacrifices made for freedom.
It shows they see themselves as part of something bigger, a fight that spans generations and borders.
And that's what's so powerful about this movement.
I agree, there's a depth to it, a sense of history and purpose.
Exactly, and we're just scratching the surface here. There's so much more to uncover.
I'm hooked. Tell me more. So we were talking about this exhibition booth at RightsCon, Vietnam's Path to Democracy, Voices of Resilience.
Right, and how they're making it interactive and engaging, but what are they actually trying to achieve with this exhibit?
It's about creating a space for learning, connection, and action, not just raising awareness.
So more than just showing up and looking at stuff.
Exactly. They want people to walk away feeling equipped to contribute to the movement, not just informed.
I see, so those tablets for petitions, the QR codes, it's all about getting people involved.
Exactly. And they're going further. They've got these mini talks planned on press freedom and digital rights, bringing in experts for live Q&As.
Sounds engaging, and I love that support and signature wall idea.
Me too. It's a simple but powerful way to show solidarity, and then people can share it on social media with the hashtag Freedom for Vietnam.
Smart move. They're extending the reach beyond the conference itself, creating a ripple effect.
And they're drumming up excitement beforehand with teaser videos and speaker announcements, building anticipation.
It's like a whole marketing campaign.
And they're not just doing this alone, they're collaborating with other organizations.
Wow, that's impressive. So they're really tapping into existing networks.
Absolutely. And partnering with Taiwanese organizations too.
So it's truly collaborative effort.
It is. And it shows they're thinking about building a sustainable movement, not just a one-time event.
Right. And a big part of that is their focus on technology, especially to support activists inside Vietnam.
We talked about VPNs earlier, but there's so much more to it.
Like what?
They have this script for a mini talk called Digital Human Rights and How to Protect Privacy. And it really gets into the nitty-gritty of digital rights in Vietnam, the surveillance, the censorship, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, that cybersecurity law of 2018 keeps coming up.
And for good reason. It's given the government so much power to monitor online activities, censor content, demand user data. It's created this climate of fear online.
It's chilling to think about. People must be constantly looking over their shoulder.
And the crazy thing is, it applies even to private messages. There's no expectation of privacy.
It's Big Brother in the digital age.
Exactly. But this mini talk doesn't just dwell on the problems.
Oh.
It offers solutions, practical advice on using tools like encrypted messaging apps, VPNs, privacy-focused browsers, stuff like that.
So they're actually equipping people with the knowledge to protect themselves.
That's the idea. And they emphasize the role of the diaspora in supporting activists on the ground, providing resources, amplifying their voices.
So it's not just about tech, it's about community and solidarity too.
Absolutely. And they highlight the importance of international pressure, holding the Vietnamese government accountable for these digital rights violations.
Speaking of specific violations, they mention the case of Pham Doan Trang, the activist imprisoned for her writing.
Right, her case is a stark reminder of the risks involved in speaking out.
But it also shows the power of words, even in a place like Vietnam.
And the alliance isn't just raising awareness, they're empowering people to fight back. There's even a proposal for a session called VPN theory and practice for press freedom in Southeast Asia.
So they're getting into the nuts and bolts of how to use these tools effectively.
Exactly. It covers choosing reliable VPN providers, configuring them for security, even advanced features like stealth mode to avoid detection.
Sounds like a crash course in digital self-defense.
It is, and it highlights the crucial role of VPNs in circumventing censorship and protecting freedom of expression.
But they acknowledge the limitations too, right? Like
Right.
government crackdowns and the need for trustworthy providers.
Right, they're not sugarcoating it. It's a constant arms race, but it's a fight worth having.
And all of this feeds into their broader strategy of building international partnerships.
Right, they're reaching out to all sorts of organizations, human rights groups, think tanks, even political parties.
It's impressive they're not just sending generic emails either.
Yeah, they're tailoring their approach to each organization, really doing their homework.
Like with the World League for Freedom and Democracy, the WLFD.
Right, their meeting agenda shows they understand the WLFD's work and have a clear vision for collaboration.
So what are they discussing specifically?
Strategic cooperation against authoritarian regimes, addressing those security challenges in the South China Sea, even learning from Taiwan's experience in building alliances with like-minded democracies.
So you're looking beyond Vietnam, seeing this as part of a global struggle.
Exactly. And they're not just talking about abstract concepts, they're proposing concrete actions, joint statements on human rights violations, mobilizing the diaspora, exploring tech to empower activists.
So they're putting those partnerships into practice.
And they're also reaching out to think tanks like
It's a message of solidarity, recognizing that Taiwan is also on the front lines of this fight against authoritarianism.
Exactly. And they're proposing collaboration on research, public diplomacy campaigns, even supporting civil society organizations working on democracy and human rights. And of course, we can't forget their outreach to Taiwan's Democratic Progressive Party, the DPP. That's a key relationship.
Absolutely. Their experience in resisting pressure from China is incredibly relevant to Vietnam's situation.
And we have both a meeting agenda and a script for this meeting, which is really insightful.
What does it tell us?
Well, they start by acknowledging the DPP's leadership in promoting democracy and human rights, expressing gratitude for their support.
So they're setting a positive tone, emphasizing shared values.
Exactly. And they're not shying away from geopolitics, bringing up China's growing assertiveness and the importance of democracies working together to counter that.
They're framing this as a shared struggle, not just a Vietnamese issue.
Right, and they highlight the strategic importance of both Taiwan and Vietnam, especially for peace and stability in the region.
So they're appealing to Taiwan's self-interest as well.
Exactly, showing that what happens in Vietnam matters for Taiwan too.
Smart move. And then they get into the specifics of human rights abuses in Vietnam.
They talk about restrictions on freedom of speech, the press, assembly, the imprisonment of dissidents, all the major issues.
And they're explicitly asking for guidance from Taiwan, wanting to learn from their democratic journey.
It's a humble approach, acknowledging Taiwan's success and positioning themselves as eager students.
I like that. It shows a willingness to learn from others.
And they're also interested in Taiwan's technological advancements, those secure communication tools and e-participation platforms.
So they're seeing Taiwan as a model for harnessing tech for democracy.
Precisely. And they're also discussing the Vietnamese diaspora in Taiwan, how they can play a role in fostering understanding and advocating for change.
So it's a multifaceted approach, combining advocacy, technology, and people-to-people connections.
Exactly. And they're proposing concrete steps, joint efforts to raise awareness at international forums, countering propaganda with positive narratives of democracy.
Sounds like a well-thought-out plan.
It is, and they end the meeting with a strong statement of solidarity, emphasizing the need for democracies to support each other.
It's a powerful message, especially in today's world where authoritarianism seems to be gaining ground.
Exactly, and all of this is just the groundwork they're laying before even arriving in Taiwan.
It shows a level of preparation and strategic thinking that's impressive.
They're not just going for a conference, they're going to build a movement.
So we've covered international partnerships, technology, but what about their efforts to raise awareness more broadly?
They've got a comprehensive media strategy, and they're actively looking for opportunities to participate in international forums.
Right, they're not just focused on RightsCon.
Exactly. Their RightsCon plan includes social media engagement, live streaming, post-event reports. They're using all the tools at their disposal.
It's about creating a buzz, making sure Vietnam's story is heard.
And they're making it easy for people to get involved, encouraging them to share their own stories, sign petitions, donate.
So they're building a global network of support.
And they're actively engaging with journalists, academics, policymakers, anyone who can help amplify their message.
It's a very strategic approach to advocacy.
And they're acutely aware of the need to counter the narratives coming out of Vietnam's state-controlled media.
Right, the government wants to control the story, downplay the abuses, silence dissent.
So the alliance is working to challenge that narrative on the international stage, presenting alternative perspectives and exposing the reality of life under an authoritarian regime.
It's a battle for hearts and minds.
Exactly. And they're using personal stories, emotional appeals to connect with a wider audience.
It's a reminder that effective advocacy needs more than just facts and figures.
It needs heart, it needs passion, and the alliance has that in spades.
And they're doing all of this in a world where authoritarianism is on the rise, freedom of expression is under threat. It's a tough fight.
It takes incredible courage to stand up to a regime like Vietnam's.
But the alliance isn't backing down. They're pushing for change on multiple fronts, inspiring others to join them.
It's a reminder that even small acts of resistance can make a difference.
And it's not just about what's happening in Vietnam. It's about defending democracy and human rights everywhere.
Exactly. Those values are under threat globally, and the alliance's fight is part of a much bigger struggle.
It's a story that deserves to be told, and we've only scratched the surface.
There's so much more to explore, especially the personal journeys of the individuals leading this fight.
That's what we'll delve into next time, the stories of sacrifice, resilience, and unwavering hope that fuel this movement. You know, through all these strategies and partnerships, what really stood out to me was the personal side of this movement.
It's true. You can really feel the dedication and sacrifice in everything they do.
Like, these aren't just faceless organizations. They're real people putting their lives on the line.
Absolutely. And they're carrying on a legacy, building on generations of struggle for freedom.
I noticed that, too. They keep referencing Vietnam's history, the fight against communism.
It gives their movement a depth, a sense of historical purpose that's really powerful.
And it explains why that visit to the Woozy Mountain Military Cemetery is so important to them.
Right. It's about honoring those who came before, those who fought and died for the same ideals.
It's a way of connecting their struggle to a global fight for freedom, showing they're not alone.
And that shared history is really evident in their outreach to the World League for Freedom and Democracy, the WLFD.
They seem to have a real affinity for that organization.
It makes sense. The WLFD has deep roots in the anti-communist movement. They share that core belief in fighting for freedom.
It's about recognizing those shared values, that sense of solidarity in the face of oppression.
And you can feel that solidarity in those letters they're writing to groups like the Taiwan Association for Human Rights, the Prospect Foundation.
There's a real warmth there, a genuine desire to connect and learn from each other.
It's not just about strategy and tactics, it's about building relationships based on shared ideals.
And that human connection is what makes their exhibition booth so compelling. They're not just presenting dry facts.
Right, they're bringing those personal stories to life, using multimedia to create an emotional impact.
They want people to walk away feeling something, to understand the human cost of this struggle.
And to feel empowered to act, to become part of the solution.
Exactly. And they're taking that same approach with their broader advocacy work, using those personal stories to counter the government's narrative.
They're showing the world that this isn't just about politics, it's about real people fighting for their basic rights.
And that's why this work is so inspiring. It's about giving a voice to the voiceless, shining a light on injustice.
And reminding us that we all have a role to play in building a more just and democratic world.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I'm just blown away by their courage and resilience. They're facing such daunting challenges.
It's a testament to the human spirit, that even under oppression, hope can flourish.
And their story is a call to action for all of us. To learn more, support those fighting for change, and never take our own freedoms for granted.
Because democracy isn't a spectator sport, it requires participation, courage, and a willingness to stand up for what's right.
And on that note, I want to thank you all for joining us on this incredible journey. Let's all do our part to make the world a little bit freer, a little bit more just, and let's keep those conversations going, because that's how change happens.